grid networking. In this presentation, we're going to be covering off the various products that grid networking offers, and POE-Jack and active POE-Jack. Before we get into that, we're going to cover a little bit about bandwidth and understanding bandwidth and network cabling. For years, manufacturers have been pushing Cat5e to Cat6 to Cat6a cable based on future-proofing. But really, what do you need at the desktop, the workstation, and premise, network cabling? Well, arguably, 99.5% of the market requires less than 100 megabits per second. And typically, video takes the most bandwidth. So we can look at Netflix 4K as an application of video that we're all familiar with from home. And really, it is taking 25 megabits per second based on 4K. Zoom, 2.5, Teams, 4, Google Meet, 4, 12 megapixel cameras. And the market right now is at 4 megapixel cameras and kind of moving to 8 megapixel cameras, 8 megapixel being 4K. They use 8 to 24 megabits per second. That depends on settings and codec/compression. And of course, voice over IP phones are using 0.1 megabits per second. So if we're running video, which traditionally takes the most bandwidth and is less than 100 megabits per second, what are we running for applications that are taking more? Well, our emails probably aren't taking a whole lot, our Excel files, our Word files, etc. So really, what do we need for cabling to the desktop? Probably not Cat6a, and probably Cat6 gives us more than enough bandwidth of what we need at a workstation. And so if we start to look at what offices need, a small office typically using, as far as their output, as a combined office and all those employees, 100 megabits per second is often fine. They're using less than 500 megabits per second in a medium office, and a gigabit in a larger office of 30 plus employees. And of course, that depending on what you're doing, does change things absolutely in what applications you're running. But all too often, people are think they need a lot more than they actually do. And so we need to differentiate what you need at your desktop and what you need as your outgoing or incoming bandwidth coming from your ISP. And so we're to take 12 2 megapixel cameras. Those combined takes 96 megabits per second. That's super interesting. 12 video feeds taking less than 100 megabits per second, and we somehow think that our VoIP phone or computer is going to be using more than that. So talking about ISPs and outgoing bandwidth is important, and of course video and etc. But a good relation is to ask yourself and look into, what does my cell phone plan offer for gigabits per month? And so you'll hear people, I've got a 50 gigabit per month plan, or even 100, some even 200 gigabits per month. And then you ask of how much do you actually use? And people use a lot of video on their phones to watch, various different social media, content, etc. But here's a really interesting fact. A constant flow of 10 gigabits per second over a 30-day month equals just less than 26 million gigabits. Does anybody have a 26 million gigabit cell phone plan? No. Is it offered? No, because it's not required. So when we start talking, 100 gigabits per month is someone's cell phone plan, why do you need 10 gigabits per second at a desktop? And I'm not saying it doesn't. In some applications you do, but that might be some of the new, some video rendering type application, certain applications. But again, it's such a small part of the market. And so spending that money on that cabling infrastructure that you really don't need. And the question always is, do you have the switches and the network infrastructure behind that to support that cabling as well? One thing you will find that 10 gig cable is going to be definitely prominent for is some of the new wireless access points are going where you need a 10 gig uplink. And so that's something to pay attention to. That doesn't mean that every desktop and every VoIP phone needs to be a Cat6a cable of 10 gigs. That's honestly a waste of money and resources. You could be putting that money and budget really into better cameras or better actual quality product. And something that's really changed bandwidth a whole lot has been codec and compression in video. You've gone from MPEG-4 to H.264 compression to H.265 or Smart H.265. And even when we looked at that in Netflix, if we looked at Netflix back in the day, we had buffering. We didn't go change our cabling in our houses from Cat3 to Cat5e to Cat6 to Cat6a to change that. What happened was, the service providers, as far as a streaming service, their compression and got better. Their technology and their side of things made it so you didn't have that buffering issue anymore. So it's interesting to kind of look at that. And for the last 25 years of, the structured cabling industry, it's been kind of, pushing cable that really hasn't come to fruition that you actually need. And so grid networking is a different company as far as cabling, infrastructure, and connectivity. And you can kind of look at a lot of people's and a lot of manufacturers, patch panels, patch cords, or jacks, and they all have looked the same for the last 25 years. There's nothing been exciting about the industry. And we're looking at changing that. Our wall plate looks different, our patch cords look different, our patch panels look different, and we've got a different way of doing things. And we have traditional too. Don't get me wrong, you don't have to go to certain solutions. We don't pigeonhole you at all. So under the grid networking brand, we have POE-Jack, POE-Cable, POE-Surge, and POE-HDMI products. And we'll go through some of these. The benefits of the active POE-Jack solution: more rack space. And so, depending on who you are, from an installer, from a consultant, an architect, an end user, certain one of these hot buttons might change things for you that are really more important. But arguably for IT people and for certified cable installers, more rack space is constantly a need. All too often, you move into a new facility. Between you got your security, your AV, and your patch panels and everything loaded up in a rack, and there's no place for that end user to come in and put their servers. It's already been filled. And of course, architects quite often don't give you telecommunications rooms, they give you telecommunications closets. And so, it's tough to get, one rack, let alone multiple racks for all the equipment that you actually need to install. Another thing that might be important to you is lower material costs or less techs required on site. When we start to look at techs, it's, you might have your great quality techs and your seasoned techs out there, but it's tough and you turn over some of the new techs who are having to do all the cable pulling. And typically you find your seasoned techs don't want to do cable pulling anymore. They just want to do the dressing and the terminations. So we definitely have some advantages for that side of things as well. If you care about the environment, we are a green and sustainable solution from many different ways, from our key POE cable product that we'll go through, but also the fact that we, using active POE-Jack can use up to 75% less cable, 75% less patch panel ports, 75% less switch ports. These all, then of course, less conduit, less wire management, smaller conduit, less smaller cable trays, etc. And so that makes a huge difference on the environment. So if the environment is a hot button for you, this will be definitely an important solution for you. And typically, every federal and state, provincial, or municipal governments have sustainability and green policies. And of course, lots of corporations, especially publicly traded corporations, have green sustainable policies. Well, if you have green sustainable policies, we are the solution for cabling connectivity for you. If you're an architect and you're looking to get lead, potentially our product has a potential to get you a lead MRC credit, which really hasn't been there in the past with network cabling. We have lower labor costs. Obviously, 75% less cabling, there's less labor, less terminations. We are a more elegant and stylish product in the rack, and hopefully you agree with that statement. We're cleaner and more organized in the racks, less patching. We're less packaging on site. How we package our products and the fact there is less products required for our active POE-Jack solution definitely changes things. And lower project bidding risk. When you're a contractor bidding on a job, either you make money or lose money based on how you quote. It's not by the materials. Materials is a fixed price. So if I can lower my variable of bidding based on labor, because if I quoted based on 40 hours and my techs took 80 hours, I can lose money on the project. And so if we can lower that variable for you, more potential for profit and less risk for you. So we're disruption in the marketplace, technologically, competitiveness, economic, social, cultural, and environmental. POE-Jack, and of course, is more than just a jack. We have various versions from a regular POE-Jack to our active POE-Jack. And of course, these still work on regular Ethernet. It can just be a computer connection. You actually don't need to have POE, powering a device. But these products do have the ability to power POE devices for you. So we offer three different connectivity solutions. Grid networking, our standard traditional keystone jacks, very much like everybody else in the marketplace. We then have POE-Jack. And POE-Jack are different jacks. They're translucent in the UTP side, and they actually have LED indicators inside. And these LED indicators are traceable. where you use the tool that's on the bottom middle, and you can actually light up and flash a port from out in the field and going to a wall plate, or vice versa. And so being able to trace out your jacks and your ports can be very beneficial to an end user figuring out what they're working with, etc. And there is a shielded version which has an LED as well. Then we get to active POE-Jack, which we're going to be talking about mostly within this. Active POE-Jack is one rear uplink, an RJ45 uplink in the back of this wall plate housing, and gives you four front ports for Ethernet. So if I'm hooking up my computers, my VoIP phones, whatever it might be, it'll allow me to have my Ethernet connections or PoE connections as well. And that can turn into a lot of different devices from digital signage, HDMI, cameras, access control, and many, many other things that are PoE powered. So the whole idea is one cable in, four ports out. What's that give you? Well, some huge advantage and less labor on pulling less cable, or terminating less cable, and of course less patch panel switch ports. So less labor, less cable, less switches, less switch ports, less rack space, less patch panels, less patch ports, less patch cables, less wire management, less conduit or cable tray, or smaller conduit and cable trays. So this is active POE-Jack. An active POE-Jack is a wall plate that comes with a faceplate that snaps over top that is screwless. So yes, it mounts with screws, but you have that faceplate that snaps in over top for a nice clean design where you don't have to see the screws. It has an LED indicator on the front to let you know that it's working, that lights up in green, and it has an on-off button for the LED indicator, not for the actual device, but for the LED indicator. So if you're in a dark space or if you're using it residentially, or up in a soffit or something, and you don't want that green light on, you have the ability to shut off the green light. This is a gigabit faceplate, and from what we've talked about before, gigabit is more than likely more than enough bandwidth for what you're doing. And so with this faceplate, the gigabit would be divided between the four ports. And if it's two VoIP phones on it, then those aren't going to pull a whole lot. You have a lot more bandwidth on the other two ports. But we'll kind of touch base on what's needed. But like we kind of talked about before, we had 12 2-megapixel cameras running at less than 100 megabits per second. So you probably don't need as much bandwidth as you think you do in most applications. So with this, it's got a gigabit uplink in the front. We have a gigabit, of course, through the front, split between those four outlets. And this whole wall plate is powered by PoE. And so we state that it needs less than 2.5 watts. It's actually lower than that, but we like a bit of a fudge factor to power the plate. It is a 60-watt output of PoE off the front of the plate. So if I do want to put in, a higher PoE into the actual wall plate, I can get 60 watts out of the whole wall plate out of the front, max 30 watts per port. Now that'll get divided up in various different ways, where I could have 30 watts out of port one and 30 watts out of port two, then just two regular Ethernet ports. Or I could have four 15-watt ports, or I could have a 30, 15, and two 7.5s. However, it's going to break down. But typically your devices are not 30 watts exactly, they're not 15 watts or 7.5. There's always more PoE budget, or flexibility within there because your camera might only be 3 or 4 watts, and you're not going to need actually 7.5 watts. So this is important as you start to bring in PoE devices, though, or you start getting into cascading, to be cognizant of what your PoE budget is and pay attention to that PoE budget and make sure that you're making sure that you're going to have enough power to power the devices that aren't connected. So this wall plate does pass VLAN, and it's also an extender. And depending on how we look or read the standards, it can go further distances. So, based on, permanent link, we can actually go from one wall plate to another wall plate, another 90 meters. So, arguably, 100 meters in some people's state, but 90 meters on permanent link. This plate will fit in a low voltage trim ring, of course, to put in a standard wall, but it will also fit in electrical boxes. And so it will fit into a small handy box, which is a common small electrical metal box, or also known as an 1110 box. So you get an idea of the size that it will fit in. It does have a grounding post on the back of it. It isn't required, but if you're putting it into a metal box, you're more than likely going to want to ground it. Or, of course, with our shielded solutions, if our shielded cable and shielded connectors that you could use with it, though it works fine with UTP. It does have certifications of C, ETL, US from Intertech, CC, CE, RCM, ISED, EMC, LVD, and its ROHS. Here's a diagram of the sides and back of the actual housing. So what you see on the bottom is an RJ45. On the bottom of the RJ45, it's on the bottom, so no debris is going to get into there, etc. And it has a grounding post that is internal into the housing dimensions. So the grounding post doesn't stick out any further, which allows us to fit into those a lot of smaller boxes or smaller electrical boxes, etc. And we have venting out the sides and the bottom, not at the top. We don't want the debris in, of course, that might come in through a wall, etc. But it's a nice, small, compact housing. Allows us to fit what we want. And of course, it fits into a one gang box, essentially electrical box, low voltage trim ring, etc. So this kind of represents where our cabling differences are. Traditionally, you would need four cables off a patch panel, which means four cables to a switch that would be patched over. And those four cables that you punch down the back of the patch panel would then be wired out to a faceplate with four jacks. So you'd have to buy the four jacks and have packaging for each one of those jacks and packaging for that plate and put it all together. So less packaging on our solution, less terminations at the patch panel, less terminations at the actual wall plate. With our solution, we're essentially doing one cable versus those four, and then one patch cable over to the switch versus four. So we're saving you, of course, switch ports, patch panel ports, rack space, cabling, termination, labor, all of that. And so definitely beneficial in doing that. So what's that look like at a workstation? Well, you might not need four outlets at every workstation, but you can start to do some interesting things. So you can actually take one of those wall plates and one cable to a pod of four workstations. And from that wall plate, that active POE-Jack wall plate, I could use patch cords over to one patch cord to each one of those workstations where we have connectivity for four computers. Or we could have two of them and they could have one for VoIP and one for a computer. Or we can end up using our regular POE-Jacks and wall plates and use those at each of the workstations off the active POE-Jack. So we have one cable coming in and then broken down to regular ports and plates within each workstation. So it can be a hybrid. You can work with it in all different ways and cascade it out. We then have our campus enterprise switch. Our campus enterprise switch has 696 gigabits per second switching capacity. Has hot swappable fans, hot swappable power supplies, and if one of those, power supplies or fans, fails, the other one is still running, but you can swap them all out. This is a campus enterprise switch. This is high quality, and of course, it's giving you 48 ports. From that, it's a layer 2, layer 3 switch, and it does have CUL. How's this look on the back end as a solution? Well, if we were to look at a traditional solution of 192 outlets, that means we're going to take, without wire management, 12 U of rack space and 192 cables, 192 terminations on the wall plate side and, of course, on the patch panel side, and then patch cables, of course, to the switches. With our solution, we're 48 cables. That means a lot less rack space, a lot less patch cables, a lot less terminations at the wall plate, and, of course, at the patch panel. And we're only 3 U of rack space. So a huge difference of doing rollouts or doing installs for offices or any kind of commercial environment. But that can also go a little bit further. If we were to look at another scenario of 384 home run cables and 384 outlets on our solution, only using 48 cables. If you use our consolidation point boxes, so these are in ceiling boxes that fit up into a suspended ceiling, or you put them into an open ceiling in a big box store, etc. But if you put 4 active POE-Jacks into our consolidation point box, and then you get wired down to additional active POE-Jacks at the workspace and the clusters and pods, that means we can still run 48 home run cables versus 384, reducing our cabling even more. Actually reducing it from up to 75% less cabling to up to 92% less cabling. And of course, a lot less rack space, a lot less patch cords. And that cleans up things in the rack, which is typically quite often a spaghetti of mess of cables. And so this allows you to manage things to a much greater level. Or we can take it to 768 home run cables versus 768 outlets on our solution based on 96 cables and using 12 consolidation point boxes with active POE-Jacks inside of each of those, going down to more active POE-Jacks at the desktops and only 6 U of rack space. We also have a 740 watt switch. This is an enterprise switch as well. This is less gigabits per second as far as switching capacity. It still is a layer 2, layer 3 switch, and of course less POE budget. But another solution at a lower cost to fill out the solution. And what you'll find is our Our campus enterprise and enterprise switch have a certain look to them that match our patch panels, our wire management, etc. This switch here is our economy switch. It looks different and looks different for a reason. Still has CUL, but doesn't match the higher end products that we traditionally promote. We also have industrial switches that are rated to -40. In these switches, they are dual redundant power inputs. Power supplies sold separately, but I can put in two power supplies if I want. So if one failed, I have a backup. These are very small, compact switches. They are DIN rail mountable. They also come with a wall mount bracket. So I can go put it on a wall, going up a riser in a hotel, condos, or office building for cameras or whatever it would be, industrial applications, or put on a shelf in a rack or a cabinet, etc. These switches are gigabit. They're rated to -40 as far as temperature. They are aluminum housing. They're IP40 rated. They do allow you 12 to 48 volts DC as far as an input. Our power supplies that we sell are 48 volt DC, so you're going to get 120 watts out of the four PoE ports, and then you have one uplink. But you can use with 12 or 24 volt, such as in security or trailers or solar applications and other things where you need a lower voltage than traditional. So lots of different applications for these. We do a version of this where the uplink is not an RJ45, but it has an SFP uplink. So different versions are available. This is an 8-port with two uplinks, and it's 240 watts out of the eight out ports. And that's based on a 48 volt DC power supply, of course. And again, gigabit and all the kind of previous specs that we had before. Our power supplies, as you see, the top three, we have a 150 watt, we have a 199.6 watt, and of course we have a DIN rail mount 240 watt power supply. So some various power supplies with certifications, of course. We'll warn that typically a lot of the security surveillance PoE switches out there do not have certifications. A lot of the power supplies don't. A lot of the PoE injectors that you're finding on, I guess online purchasing sites do not have certifications. We have certifications on our switches that are enterprise and campus switches. And on our industrial switches, we don't have the certifications because they're low voltage. But the power supplies we put into them, we definitely do need to have those certifications, and that's why these power supplies have those certifications. And of course, our PoE injectors have those certifications as well. And so we have a 24 watt wall PoE injector that's gigabit, and we have a 60 watt PoE injector that is also CUL approved. And it's important to have those certifications, of course. We're more than just a cable and connectivity solution. So we bring solutions out to our customers that are in hospitality and retail. And so if you have a point of sale station that is PoE, fantastic, plug it into an active PoE jack. But if you don't, we have adapters. So if you need to plug in a particular printer that's 5 volt or 12 volt or a touchscreen and powered off an active PoE jack, we have this various adapters. And within those adapters, we include various barrel adapters to make sure whatever size barrel adapter you need for power for that printer or touchscreen, we have those different options for you. And of course, we have USB, USB-C, and Lightning adapters. So if you have an iPad version of a point of sale, we have an adapter for that. And of course, USB, USB-C, and whatever devices those might be. Our patch panels look different. I think they look elegant. I hope you do too. But essentially, they're a nice looking patch panel that match our enterprise campus grade switches. They have 24 24 regular PoE jacks built in that are green. And then, of course, you could swap this out where you can end up having our shielded jacks in there or a different color jack of PoE jack in there as well. And you can hybrid, and based on it being a keystone patch panel, we could have ports 1 to 20 being on active PoE jacks, and we could have the last 4 being on wireless access points that are on a shielded solution or something like that. So it gives you that kind of flexibility. But this patch panel as a SKU does come with the PoE jacks in green that have the LED traceable jacks in them. The tracing tool is sold separately as a part number. And each one of these jacks has 50 micron gold-plated pins within it for great performance. These jacks are actually Cat6A UTP jacks. And so we don't have a Cat5e, a Cat6, and a Cat6A solution. We are just giving you one patch panel to make it less requirements what you need. And so typically our solution is going to be a Cat6 or what we kind of call Cat6e that we'll kind of show a little bit later on. And so these jacks are encompassing that. You can use it in various different applications, but it means less SKUs for the contractor, less SKUs for the distributor, and less SKUs for us to deal with as well. And so we're just trying to simplify everything, within the marketplace. Our consolidation point box. Our consolidation point box is a suspended ceiling box. So put it up in that 2x2 grid, or put it into an open ceiling in a big box store, wherever you might do. On the front of it, it has a hinge lid with a lock, and it's vented on that front lid. So attach your wireless access point to that front lid. Consolidate more cabling into that actual box. On the back, inside the enclosure, you've got a slotted tray. That slotted tray, you can put your HDMI or digital signage boxes and other products and mount them up into there with cable wrap or cable ties or any other way you see fit. But there is gangable openings where you can put active POE jacks in there. So you can put 4 of them in there, of course, to reduce your cabling up to 92%. Our clean patch wire managers. Our clean patch wire managers are a little bit different than traditional wire managers. Traditional wire managers are usually front faced on the actual rack and have a box out the front. Well, this has a bit of a box out the front, but it really has the box in behind. And the whole idea of the box in behind is to maintain bend radius and give you room to put all your patch cables and maintain bend radiuses. So typically this works great with a 2-foot patch cord going from the switch into the wire manager through the fingers and then out through the fingers on the other side to the patch panel, keeping it all clean and organized without a ton of congestion where you're trying to slam the lid closed on it. This, of course, matches our patch panel. This matches our enterprise campus switches, so it all looks very clean in the rack and all matches. This is a new product. This is POE-Surge. POE-Surge is a patch panel geared for many applications, but really for surveillance and security camera applications. It has RJ45s in the back with a rear wire management bar and RJ45s out the front. And so typically you can put all your cameras into the back and then you patch from the front of it over to your actual switch. And so it makes it clean, less rack space, and of course it's surge protected to protect all your devices that are connected to it. But this could be for point-to-point wireless access points. It could be, of course, for cameras or access control, any other devices, industrial applications, etc. But a different patch panel. So POE-Surge. Our RJ45s are different. So our RJ45s are actually violet in color. They always come with the strain relief boot. It's not sold separately. It comes in a 100-pack jar pack with a handle. And so if it's included, you're going to put the strain relief boot on it and do it properly. And that's the whole idea behind this. But within that connector, it actually has a green, lime green/yellow staggered sled. The staggered sled keeps the separation of the conductors prior to your full termination. But what it does, it makes it easy loading. So unlike pass-through connectors where you pass those through the connector and you could have open connectors or pieces, of insulation and conductors sticking on the end, we don't have that issue because we do pass-through on the staggered sled and not on the connector because we're worried about shorting or arcing having those exposed conductors. So the staggered sled allows you to pass through all your conductors through the staggered sled, and you push that staggered sled up to the edge of the jacket, and then you use our trim tool to just trim off the other end. Once that's done, you load the staggered sled with the cable into the RJ45 and you crimp down. And of course, then assemble your strain relief boot onto it. The pins inside that connector are 50 micron gold plated. They don't have 1 prong or 2 prongs. They have 3 prongs because we want the best communication performance and we want the best POE performance out of that connector. So definitely different connectors than you traditionally see. Our patch cords are different. Our patch cords in the POE-Jack line are translucent. So you can actually see the pairs through the jacket of the cable. And so they look definitely different than the rest of the market, but same with the green or the violet, they're also translucent. And so we do these, 6-inch, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 6 foot, 9 foot, 25, and right up to 50 feet. Our cable's different. We have less cables, so we do have a Cat6a cable. We do have shielded cables. We do have various different cables, but we're trying to limit our cables. So this cable, which we call Cat6e, and yes, we understand that Cat6e is not an official standard. It's Cat6, but it's an enhanced version of that Cat6. And so we use 23 gauge conductors in this cable because we're worried about voltage drop and we want better POE performance. We just don't have as tight of a twist with that 23 gauge that you would in a Cat6a because Cat6a traditionally uses 23 gauge. But with that less tight of a twist, Of course, it's less, copper, and of course, it's less expensive than doing a Cat 6A version of this. But this cable is very unique in the fact that it has a cross member in it, and that it has a lot of other features that we're going to get into, including red list free. So red list free is, doesn't have 800 different toxic chemicals and compounds in the cable. So our solution is lower environmental impact or lead, and trying to get your lead points. More organized, we're more flexible, we're more room, cleaner patching, we're a POE solution. We're more than cabling connectivity. We're an ecosystem, and we're a lower cost. Not necessarily as per our product, but as a full solution, because of course there's less patch panels, there's less, patch cables, there's less wire, less termination, less labor. So again, we're not just cabling and connectivity, we're PoE switches, we're PoE extenders, we're PoE adapters, we're wire management, we're wire, patch cables and patch panels, and of course we're the POE-Jack and active POE-Jack. As a company, we try to be customer centric. We want to listen to you. If you have feedback of products you want or see and what we need to expand into, we want to talk to you. We're definitely open communication and want to work with customers and make the best solution for them to go out in the field with. Definitely flexible as a company, convenient, we're competitive, we're environmentally minded, and we're solution oriented. So benefits, lower project bidding risk, less labor. You can have higher skilled techs on site, having one doing the cable pulling and of course the terminations versus having a bunch. Less material costs, less rack space, less packaging to deal with on site. We have a universal cable, and our universal cable replaces a lot of traditional cables. More elegant and stylish products, cleaner, more organized racks, uses active POE-Jack as an extender without the need for localized power or power supply, and an environmentally responsible solution. So if we go into POE-HDMI, we have HDMI extenders. We have all the switches and every extender out there in the market? No. We're very limited, but it's about filling out our ecosystem. And so POE-HDMI can work as a regular extender, but it can work as a POE extender as well. 4K 60 hertz, no power supplies required, but you can use them if you want, as IR passback, 1 gigabit Ethernet, and they're sold as a pair. So as you can see in the picture on the right, you've got a transmitter plugged into a PoE switch, so it's powered by the PoE switch in this application, and it's getting a video from a computer in this application. But the receivers are powered by a PoE switch as well, so I don't need those brick transformers. I don't need the electrical to be run for all that and all the extra power and power bars and cords and everything else that of course makes a wire management nightmare. It's less wiring, and we sell extra receivers separately to do that, so I can have duplicate screens off that one transmitter for digital signage, for bar TVs and sports, etc. So it will work as traditional, where I can go transmitter to receiver by one cable directly and then have local power supplies. You can use that as an application. But more often than not, you're going to use a PoE switch, and you're going to power them off the switch and have it patch over from your patch panel to do that. Of course, we can buy those extra receivers and get those duplicate images. So in the case of a bar, I could have 4 TVs on each side of the bar, and I could have transmitter 1 for TV 1 on each side of the bar, then transmitter 2 for each side, then 3 and 4, and just buy all those extra receivers, etc. So it allows you to do that, and it's all powered by PoE. But I could bring active POE-Jack into the solution. So that means less wiring, where I actually have to have just 1 per every 4 TVs, 1 cable go to an active POE-Jack, and then patch those over to, of course, the POE-HDMI receivers. So less cabling. Again, we're not everything in digital signage. This is an open Android platform. We don't do the app, so you can use whatever app you prefer or like. We are just trying to fill our ecosystem for our customers and make it easier. So when we have some of our retail national account customers, and they have had issues with power supply bricks under shelving, they get hit by boxes, etc., and they end up not working because of that, or those power supplies fail out in the field, and they're having to send techs to go deal with them. Less wiring, less wire management, less hassles with this solution, because this digital signage box is an Android box that is powered by PoE. And so that gives us our communication and our power. It does have Wi-Fi as well, actually. And it does allow you to do local power supply if you want as well. So idea, I could use a local power supply, do a traditional type application. I could have, in this case, 4 different local power supplies and all that wiring, and of course have those cords up behind all of those screens for those menu boards or digital signage or whatever it might be. Or, of Of course, I could not have those power supplies supplied by POE. Or I could use active POE-Jack and reduce that cabling even more to those POE digital signage boxes. We also have touchscreens. And so our touchscreens are an open Android platform. And so with these, you can put on whatever apps you want. So if you want to go in and put a restaurant app, right, URC and RTI, any of those automation type systems on it, you can do that, and it's a lower cost touchscreen for those applications. But it might be meeting room apps on the sides of all the meeting rooms and boardrooms within a company where you use whatever app you want. The nice thing is we're not proprietary. So if you put in our solution, you could choose a meeting room app solution today, and if you change tomorrow, it's just same hardware, just changed a different app into whatever it might be. This also allows you for commercial automation. If you prefer Lutron for lighting, you want to put their app on it, you can control that. Somfy shades. You want Sonos audio or a Rust sound. It gives you all the flexibility. Whatever camera app or intercom app or video doorbell app, commercially or residentially, it gives you all those options. You can mount this horizontally or vertically. It has a very slim, low profile mounting bracket. And of course, it's powered by POE and it's open Android platform. We're not in that business. You use whatever you want. And if you decide that whatever type of thermostat today is your favorite and tomorrow you change it out, your touchscreen, you can just change out the app and not be stuck with whatever it was, not proprietary. Big benefit. So we can power these locally, or we can use a POE connection to one as we see on the left, or use it with active POE-Jack to reduce that cabling again to all those different touchscreens. Here's a look at the view on the right. Where you can see the POE IP Ethernet connection and the low voltage, or sorry, the low profile mounting plate that makes it really easy to mount in low profile. There is lights on the side of the touchscreen. You can turn them off. You can turn them different colors. Whatever best suits you, you can have those. We have IP POE extenders. The nice thing about this IP POE extender, which does up to 500 meters or 1,640 feet, up to 100 megabits per second, and up to 30 watts POE, is they don't require power supplies at each side. A common theme in what we're doing. So that means I don't have to have those power bricks. I can power it by POE and run it over that coax. And so that might be in an elevator, that might be a legacy cable coax that I have, or the same set also works on single pair Ethernet. So if I have a category cable that's old, a Cat3 or Cat5e that we broke a pair in, and we want to run IP POE over it because we have good pairs that are still in that cable, we can use the same product using the green Phoenix connector to do that. So, single pair Ethernet POE, or of course coax. Now, our actual specs here as far as distances are based on copper cables. There are some tin cables that are put out there in the marketplace. You're going to get lower distances or maybe some challenges with that, but you'll have to test it and figure out what works best for you. But of course, this will work with your copper coax to extend it out, and then you can put, of course, in a active POE-Jack on the end as well. Or, of course, you have a twisted pair, you can use a twisted pair. Great for elevators. Elevators traditionally have coax to put in cameras, digital signage, or wireless internet within those elevator cabs. Well, this is a solution to work for that as well. These are sold as a set, and they've got a very reasonable cost. We have a fiber solution. Our media converter, these aren't sold as a pair, they're individual. But the individual allows you to work with a fiber transceiver you put into the box, and then you can put a fiber transceiver into a switch, and then you can use it that way. Or you could go box to box, either way. Lots of different solutions, but you can get that longer distance fiber solution. We have adhesive hook loop mount. So this allows you to take put this onto a device, put it in an enclosure, put it in a rack, put it on a shelf, and mount different devices. Very handy. We have a cable wrap, all different colors to bundle those cables, 1/2 inch by 75 feet. We do a spool of cable wrap. So you get 10 rolls of 75 feet on the spool, 2 of them being black and then various other colors. So great to have in the back of a tech's truck and service van where he wants to match cable or if he wants to identify something, he has all those colors sitting there in his truck. We also do 600-foot rolls of hook and loop in white or in black. We do a cage nut tool. Makes it easy to add and remove cage nuts out of those rails without hurting your fingers, etc. Kind of looks like nail clippers, but a really handy tool. We do a cable comb, combing all those cables out of those conduits and those cable trays. We do another cable comb you see on the right for going into the back of patch panels. And you can click two of these together for 48 ports or bigger patch panels. And of course, you see our LED continuity tester that flashes the regular POE-Jack's LEDs. We have a crimp tool. We have a flush cutter tool, punch down tool, aramid yarn, Kevlar scissors, and of course, a tool belt that's coming soon. We have regular patch cords of solid colors under the Grid brand, not the POE-Jack brand. Of course, various different jacks, including shielded jacks, unloaded patch panels for those shielded jacks. And of course, we have the Grid connectors and a regular Cat6 patch panel under the Grid brand. Decorator straps in black, white, stainless. We have regular wall plates and various other connectors. We also have a DIN rail mount, rack mount to put those switches into the rack. So great solutions for connectivity and cabling. You can use this in office applications, use this in pods, point of sale, people counters, price scanners, all that cabling for retail we can reduce. KDS or kitchen display systems, reduce that cabling. Self-checkouts, voice over IP phones, digital signage applications, video conferencing, IP audio speakers. IP audio speakers require a lot of switch ports, a lot of cabling. Use active POE-Jack in our consolidation point boxes to reduce those costs of the switch ports and, of course, the cabling. Security applications, surveillance camera applications, access control applications, residential pre-wire. Run one wire to the soffit and add an active POE-Jack later if you're going to add cameras later. Industrial control, agriculture. Sonos now has POE speakers, great for applications those restaurants and cafes. Kiosks, casino cabling, huge reduction in casino cabling from those slot machines, those tables, those ATMs, the digital signage, and everything else they have. Airport, those long runs of cabling. Warehouses for long runs of cabling. Hotels, construction sites, reduce that cabling. Parkades, really difficult to, of course, run cables out there. And typically when you're running cables out in parkades, you need to end up having to run power to put a wall cabinet with a switch, etc. Just run an active POE-Jack to one, break it off into an electrical box in the ceiling, break out to more POE-Jacks for cameras or whatever other devices you're doing. Condo wiring, POE lighting, access control. So lots of applications in retail and national accounts. Lots of applications in offices, workstations, digital signage applications, reduce your cabling in security monitoring centers, casinos, education, those new smart displays and workstations, retail hospitality challenges. There's always challenges with rack space in these applications. Security surveillance trailers. In this application, we show 109 devices. So we got retail point of sale stuff, we got cameras cascaded to another active POE-Jack to more cameras. Same with digital signage, IP speakers, HDMI, computers, and phones. So 109 devices means 109 ports for switches, 109 patch panel ports, 109 home run cables, and 8 U of rack space traditionally. With our solution, 109 devices, 19 switch ports, 19 patch panel ports, 19 home run cables, and only 2 U of rack space. It changes things drastically. Less cabling. Using a consolidation point, even less cabling again. Access control, less cabling, putting it over to all those control boxes on the wall, less cabling, less ports. Cascading to cameras. In this application, we have the uplink from the switch and patch panel into an active POE-Jack on the wall and an electrical box, and then go an additional 90 meters to those cameras or IP speakers. Or extend it even further, another 90 meters to an active POE-Jack and go another 90 meters to other devices. Uprisers in condos, hotels, and towers. One cable to each floor to those wireless access points or those cameras. Less cabling. Less cabling in retail and big box stores, especially for those long runs. In this case, We could run one active POE jack 90 meters into an electrical box in the ceiling in a parkade, and then connect four more active POE jacks off the original. So cascade them for another 90 meters to those wall plates. And then we could have another 90 meters to each of the devices to the cameras. So in this case, we can get 12 cameras all coming off one home run line and no power required or wall cabinet and all those extra costs out there in the field. So what's that mean for bandwidth budget? Well, less than 100 megas per second based on 2 megapixel cameras. But what's it mean for PoE budget? Well, that means 3 cameras per plate at 4 watts each is 12 watts. So that's fine per plate. And total wattage for all of them is less than 48 watts. So less rack space, only one cable going back to each one of those patch panel ports, and then to those switch ports for each plate, even though you're getting 4 outlets. Significantly less cabling. Here's an idea of a hybrid application. So we could have 20 active PoE jacks on ports 1 to 20. But ports 21, 22, 23, and 24, we might have dedicated lines that go out to wireless access points. Again, we're not always active PoE jack. We have traditional PoE jacks that you put into wall plates, or we have traditional Keystone jacks under the Grid Networking brand. So if you really want to be traditional, we have solutions for you. If you want to be hybrid between active PoE jack and regular PoE jack, we have that solution. Or if you want to go all active PoE jacks, we have that as well. So we offer you a lot of different solutions than what you typically see in the marketplace. And that's grid networking. Thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it. Please contact us with any questions or contact our distributors or ask other distributors to get involved with grid networking and PoE-Jack. Thank you.